Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Found Media Podcast. My name is Carolyn. I'm your host. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing my face. This is the second episode of the podcast, and I've been having some issues getting the podcast on the Apple podcast app. It's up and it published, but it's not showing up when I click the link. So, I'm working on fixing that. I'm kind of just waiting it out to see what's happening. But in the meantime, I'll be putting them out on YouTube. If you can hear my dog panting, it's very hot today and we were just running around. But today I wanted to talk about the mystery of the ship, the Ourang Medan. So starting off, depending on what sources you read, this either took place in 1940, 1947, or 1948. So keep that in mind because it comes up later. But the start of this story is an SOS signal. This SOS was sent out and received by several British and Dutch outposts, and they received it from a freightliner called the SS Ourang Medan. This ship was currently sailing through the Strait of Malacca, which is like Australia's here, and it's northeast of that. The message that was sent out was, "All officers, including captain, are dead, lying in chart room and bridge. Possibly whole crew dead." And then a couple seconds later, there was a second transmission that said, "I die." Now, the closest ship to the position of the Ourang Medan was the Silver Star, which was a US ship. The captain of that ship agreed to go and help the Ourang Medan, and they found it, but it was approximately 50 miles off from the transmitted location. And what the crew of the Silver Star did not know at the time was that they were the first responders to a mystery that is still unsolved to this day. So, first of all, upon arrival to the ship, it's common that there are people up on the deck of the ship that needs to be saved, running around, getting their stuff ready to be saved. But as the crew of the Silver Star got closer, they were immediately creeped out because there was nobody to be seen. There was absolutely no movement on the top of the deck. Upon getting onto the ship, the crew of the Silver Star was confronted with dead bodies. There were dead bodies everywhere. It was the crew of the Ourang Medan. It said they were all over the ship. They were in their rooms. They were not just in the chart room and the bridge, like the SOS signal said they were. The sailor who had sent the SOS signal was found lying over the transmitter, the telegraph machine, with his finger still on the button, and not even the dog of the ship, which was a small terrier, survived. The dog had its lips stuck in a snarl of terror and seemed to have died of fear. The whole crew's expression was actually very similar to the dog's. Their mouths were open, their eyes were bulging out, and they appeared to be screaming as they died. Some of them were reported to have their arms sticking straight out and to the sky because they were all found on their backs. Despite evidence of a horrific death, none of the crew's bodies had any physical damage, no injuries to suggest what happened to them. So the crew of the Silver Star were pretty creeped out at this point. They couldn't find the cause of death, they didn't know what to do, so they just decided, we are going to pull this ship to port and have an expert look at it. So they attached the Ourang Medan to their ship and were about to start pulling, but it's reported that flames at that moment started billowing from the back of the ship or one of the docks or the decks underneath below the ship. The crew basically said, "We cannot deal with this. This is too unsafe. We don't know what's going on." And they cut the line that attached their ship to the Ourang Medan. And in that moment, the Ourang Medan exploded and sank to the bottom of the ocean. So one reason this story is hard to verify, like the date, if it actually happened, is because there is no actual records of the Ourang Medan existing. Some people theorize that several countries came together and did a massive cover-up to disguise or erase the fact that the incident on the Ourang Medan happened. And even the Silver Star's records don't show any record of them going on a rescue mission to help the Ourang Medan. So how do we know that any of this happened if there is no record of the ship and there's no record of the saving of the ship? There are a couple references to this story in credible sources. The first one, in 1952, there was an issue of the Proceedings of the Merchant Marine Council, which is published by the Coast Guard, and the quote from that is, "The crew's frozen faces were upturned to the sun, the mouths were gaping open, and the eyes staring." Another document was approved for release just in 2003, and it was a letter written in 1959 and originally classified as top secret. The organization who actually classified it as top secret and then approved it for release was the CIA. The person who wrote the letter was C.H. Mark Jr., however, the recipient of the letter remains redacted. So a quote from the letter is, "Dear Redacted, on May 29th, 1958, I sent you a letter concerning crews disappearing from ships on high seas, or ships that have disappeared without a trace. Well, I have just read a weird story concerning the Dutch vessel, the SS Ourang Medan. I will be indeed grateful for your opinion on this story. Also, do you think this something from the unknown was involved?" And then later in the letter, Mark said, "I feel sure that the Ourang Medan tragedy holds the answer to many of these airplane accidents and unsolved mysteries at sea. Yes, the enchanted sea, what terrifying secret does it hold? I feel sure that the SS Ourang Medan tragedy holds the answer to this secret." So those are two references to the story of the Ourang Medan by very credible sources. But what actually happened on the ship? Some theories were that aliens or pirates attacked the boat itself, which aliens, it's possible. But pirates, I'm not so sure, because there were, remember, no physical injuries to the crew. So another theory is that the crew was poisoned by whatever they were transporting. People think that they were carrying either a very large amount of one specific chemical or some other secret chemical that the government doesn't want us to know about. So some people think the crew was poisoned by that. But if they were poisoned by that, it would have most likely been from them breathing in the fumes. And if that's the case, then why weren't the crew of the Silver Star affected? Theories on it being due to a chemical also account for the reason why so many countries went through great lengths to cover up the incident. And then another theory is that it's all just a hoax. So one of the things I found on it being just a hoax is on Skittish Library. This was an article written by a person that just goes by Estelle. And this person found newspaper articles from 1940 describing the incident, but some things were different. First of all, there were no details in the newspaper on how the dead crew looked, how they appeared. There was nothing about their physical expression or how their bodies were positioned. The Ourang Medan was cited as a steamship and not a freighter. The location was found near the Solomon Islands rather than the Strait of Malacca, which is about 4,000 miles apart. The SOS was also significantly different. instead of the creepy one that's in the story that I just told, it was cited as SOS from the steamship Ourang Medan. Beg ships with shortwave wireless. Get touch doctor. Urgent. And the second transmission was probably second officer dead. Other members crew also dead. Disregard medical consultation. SOS urgent assistant warship. After that, the crew sent a final transmission where it was actually an unfinished message that just said, crew has. Which is creepy, but it's nowhere near as strange and eerie as the story of the SS Ourang Medan, the freight liner. So I also read that this story, the one in the newspaper that was found by Estelle, was taken by a person who read it or was somehow connected. I don't really remember how, but it was just taken and inflated over time to be what it is today. So if that's the case, it would be strange that in 1952, there's a reference by the Coast Guard, and then in 1958, there's a letter from someone about the mystery of the Ourang Medan. And if it was just what the newspaper said it was, then why did the letter writer think that there was something from the unknown involved? So let me know what you guys think in the comments. I know I don't have any subscribers right now. I want to know if you think this is just a story that's been inflated over time, or if the people who want this story covered up have done it in a way that makes this look like a hoax. So thank you guys so much for joining me. This has been the Found Media Podcast. My name is Carolyn. If you have a creepy story of your own that you would like to share, my email is in the description. You can also find the sources that I use down there. If you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. If you're somehow listening on podcast, if I managed to get it up, then please subscribe to the podcast. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode.